Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Optimal Championship League. We are here with game number 2 between Ragnarok and Optimal Esports. And man, Ragnarok Berserkers showing us exactly what they can do when they get their desired champions, when they play to the meta, and they know how to ban things. Optimal Esports definitely kind of have to work in that realm, but let's see if they can bounce back here for game number 2. Aulz, what are you looking for as adjustments from this team?
Well, for Optimal, I think the biggest thing is they need to pick something that's a little bit more consistent. There was a lot of focus in that team comp on the Kindred, on getting that scaling early, and then they didn't build anything around that Kindred to help her get to the point she needed to. So if they're going to pick something that needs heavy scaling, they need a team comp built around it. If they're going to pick something else, make it something consistent, make it something with a good mid game. Maybe a Lucian, maybe a early game mage. Heck, we could even see something like a Victor that may need to get to late game, but doesn't need to be babysat to get there. We just need something that's a little bit easier for them to work with.
And Ragnarok Berserk is immediately going to go back to the Seraphine. This was in the hands of T-Lights for game number 1, but it has immense flex potential mid, a bot, or support. I think that it would be fine to return back to the hands of T-Lights, but the fact of the matter is, Ragnarok are mostly just signaling that they're going to play their hands close to their chest for this game, at least during the draft phase. They want to keep this as a flex. They want to make it a little bit harder for Optimal Esports to gamble on these bans, but I do like the snapback response. They're going to get the Sejuani, and I do want to note a little bit of a gambit that we saw here early on in the ban phase, because I like to see this kind of development from teams at this level of play. We see the Jarvan knocked out by Ragnarok. They banned the Maokai last game when they were on the red side. They clearly gambited that Optimal Esports would either continue to go for their comfort bans like the Zoe that we saw from game number 1 or ban the Maokai. They knock out the Maokai. Ragnarok very clearly tanks for a little bit, waiting to figure out what they want to pick. They go for the Seraphine, but Optimal Esports, I think, really on top of it, getting the Sejuani for Tim. And this is a new look for the jungle that makes a lot of sense. Although not as much of a new look for the bot lane. The Zeri coming through instead of the Sivir, still a massive scaler, still probably going to do well with an Enchanter. You can also see the Annie in that lane, but given that you see the Seraphine so early, I don't want to go into that kind of long range again.
Yeah, now comes the question though. If you're Ragnarok, because you managed to force them to drop the Zoe ban, do you pick it up here? Are you so interested in the Zoe for your mid laner that you are willing to pick it up here on first rotation?
I don't know if it's really that good in this meta and if it's worth picking. Um, It'll be interesting to see for sure. I think that Elliot is a player that is clearly adept at a lot of things. Yone kind of the polar opposite of the Zoe in terms of how they want to play, although I guess they both pick very nicely. But I do like the fact that Ragnarok are going to leave the selection of the mid laner for the second phase. Most likely could be Twitch mid, could be Vi mid. Seen both of those before. Seen Seraphine mid as well. But yeah, I really like the Twitch Seraphine bot lane pairing right now. Once again, still massive flex potential with these champions. You could have full AP Twitch support, just kind of roaming across the map and popping people. You could have the Seraphine mid or Seraphine bot. But Optimal Esports locking in, I think, a much more standard composition right now. They go Zeri Lulu, and I think that right now this is kind of giving carte blanche to Ragnarok to continue to adjust their composition. Maybe look for something a little bit more aggressive bot lane.
Yeah, they could, but on the other side, this is what we needed to see from Optimal. This is something a little bit safer, a little bit more standard. This is something that doesn't require everything to fall right and for you to be executing at the highest level all the way through the game. So depending on what we see for Red 4 and 5 here, this might be exactly what the doctor ordered for Optimal to bring this series back to 1-1.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Optimal still going to respect ban out that Zoe, though, which really shows the gravitational pull that Elliot is exerting upon this draft as a whole. And they're only silver 2, according to what we see inside of the custom game lobby.
Well, looks can be deceiving after all. You know, there's a lot of folks that like to play TFT out there that are mid-diamond, upper masters in TFT, and you get them in the game and they're right back in bronze with the rest of us. So, all things are possible in custom lobbies.
That's definitely true. We're seeing all the bans now get standardized, set out on the table. Ragnarok going to fully pinch away the pool of Pata, knocking out the Gnar and Ornn, two tanky champions. And I'm kind of interested to see this be the case. You already have the Sejuani to absorb a lot of abuse, and especially in the form of poke during team fights. So you could afford to go for something a bit more bruisery top side of the map. Oh, but I do love this pivot. Optimal Esports said,
Oh.
actually, Pata has already drafted the Sejuani. What you guys doing? Here's the Belveth for Tim.
You know, you know, I really did lead this draft with please pick something that doesn't need babysitting to scale. And they pull out the Belveth. They're really just not listening to me, but I love it. I think it's
I
okay here.
I think it's a very cute pivot. The issue is that Tim did not function super well on a carry jungler in game number 1, and I'm concerned if they're going to be able to make it happen again, this time on a champion that I think is even more difficult to execute perfectly on versus the Kindred. This Belveth takes a lot of skill, takes a lot of adjustment time, and given that you're seeing such an easy to execute composition coming through for Ragnarok once again with the Saggy Graggy and the Syndra, this might be a tough one for Optimal Esports to punch through to get us to game number 3.
See, I have the opposite opinion because I think that the Kindred is harder to execute on. Not because she's a more mechanically difficult champion, but because the window to get her to her scaling is so narrow. Belveth, you just keep punching things. And sure, you might die a few times getting there, but eventually it's going to happen. But with the Kindred, if you can keep her from getting takedowns, if you can keep her from getting into the jungle, there's nothing that she can do to reach infinite scaling. So I think in that regard, this might be easier for Tim to claw it back if he starts to struggle at any point.
Well, we certainly have to hope so because Tim was making some desperation plays very early on into the game that I think got Optimal Esports behind. And from there, the team really never looked the same. Those picks in the topside jungle as they were desperately trying to go for those Raptors just felt super uncomfy.
Oh, yeah.
And because of that, I really hope to see a pivot in strategy. Maybe Belveth will just kind of perma farm, maybe not even look for ganks early. Not that the champion is fantastic at them. You really need to hit that W to do a whole lot. And there's not a ton of setup, at least bot side of the map. Maybe they're just going to go babysit this Malzahar. Who's to say? And I do think while this Malz is doing a good job kind of backing up Optimal as a whole, once again, I got to give my vote over to Ragnarok for just having a more coherent identity.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I do, however, think that this game is going to go very late, irregardless of which team wins. With a Twitch, with a Syndra, with a Malzahar, with a Zeri. Those are your 4 carries, and they all want to get to some form of scaling cap, some form of 2, 3, 4 items even. So I think that potentially we might have the first 20 or so minutes to rest our voices here.
Yeah, we'll definitely see if that's going to be the case. Although, I'm going to try to inject fun wherever possible. Alls, I
Oh,
do
of
not hear
course.
my vocal cords.
Yeah, I'm wondering how many weeks it'll be before I have Stockholm syndrome with your puns. I'm putting my money down to about week 5 before I finally throw in the towel.
Oh man, I got some good ones that I hopefully could pull out this game. I was prepping them throughout the first round, but I just didn't really have the opportunity to say them, unfortunately. But yeah, hopefully this will be a sprawling, expansive game, Alls. I'm gonna actually back you up on that front because that means a lot of space for me to try to force them.
Oh gosh. All right, well now I'm praying for a short game. That being said, I don't know that there's much else to touch on. I think we've done a pretty good job of running things down as we've seen them. Is there anything else that jumps out at you, Nyarko?
Not really. When we're looking at the client draft here, we're seeing a very similar setup to what we were expecting. It isn't going to be something like the Belveth top of the Sejuani jungle pivot. It's going to be no Vi top. It's going to be Gragas, in fact, in the hands of You Wrong Me, right? That's actually a lane I really want to watch out for. I know that there's probably not a whole lot of kill pressure between these two champions, especially given that I believe it's on You Wrong Me, right, to really build tanky on this Gragas to work as a frontliner for Syndra, Twitch, and Seraphine. But you know, this has been a player that has really surprised me in game number 1. They pivoted from a rough early individual laning phase into some fantastically well set up team fights. But at the same time, there were still moments of weakness that I would really like to see patched up. They kind of died for free topside of the map during a siege versus optimal that I wasn't really comfortable with on that singed. And maybe Gragas is just going to be, as a playmaker and as a frontliner, a little bit less susceptible to those kinds of ints. And maybe this is the direction the Ragnarok needs to go to even more confidently win a game number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see how that goes. For the side of Optimal, though, I'm going to be a little bit interested to see how this Sejuani goes. Doesn't have the same bruiser capabilities as the set, so might be a little bit interesting how well that shift goes. I know there's a lot of tank players that love to play bruisers as well, but for some of us, it can be a little bit difficult to code switch like that. So we'll have to see if Optimal's top laner is up to the task here.
Definitely. And, there is one champion I'm definitely not excited for at all. And anyway, it is going to be the most uninteresting. It is the Malzahar. I do not understand that champion and why anyone thinks it's enjoyable to play it. But regardless, it is going to be here. It is going to be pressing R. We are going to see who pays the QSS tax on Ragnarok's side. But before that point, let's throw it to a quick break, Aulz. Let's get our voices rested so I can dump all the puns in the world once we get back into this game number 2.
Well, it's a shame that we are casting, because otherwise I would be getting myself some liquid courage for that. We'll be right back, folks. Good to go.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Optimal Championship League. We are here with game number 2 between Ragnarok Berserkers and Optimal Esports. We have fought through many a technical difficulty to get to this point, and it is now judgment time for round number 1. Optimal Esports backs to the wall after a pretty rough game number 1. They had some individually well-performing lanes, but unfortunately, they could not translate that into the mid or late game. Now, they have drafted for full scaling, and the question is, can they execute this time around?
Yeah, they did get lucky. Ragnarok chose to match them with the full scaling. No early game comp coming out to punish here. So they might be able to get to that late game point, and maybe if we hit 30 minutes and they're still even, they will be able to execute this time and come out with a win to send us to game 3.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to be able to see that Optimal Esports. Once again, the namesake of this entire series, we have one of our wonderful coordinators slash producers, Robin, there playing the ADC role. But, they were a little bit punished. They weren't able to shine in the game number 1. Hopefully they get the opportunity to do so here. So we can make some wonderful statements to continue to praise and hopefully inflate our pay grade, as it were.
You know, sometimes they just gotta find the best casters, and the best casters are the ones that call you the best player, regardless of what you're doing.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to be focusing on that Zeri Lulu because not only is it piloted by the wonderful Robin, but it's also a matter of this bot side of the map, I think, being a real big deciding factor for this game. Once again, T-Light's going to that Seraphine will be able to zone out Blue Caboose early, but this time around, it's very enchantery, very hyper-scaly down there with the Twitch in the hands of Wheeze. And so if anybody can get this lane snowballing early and get quite a bit of gold onto one of these 280 carries, I think that you can really see the identity and tempo of the game start to solidify even early on.
Yeah, and tempo is going to be important here with the scalers. Being able to get a couple of lanes up, a couple of waves ahead, maybe an EXP advantage, being able to push, and more importantly, being able to stifle your enemy laner. If you can keep that Twitch from hitting level 6 for an extra even 30 seconds, that's a huge win for you for Robin and Caboose.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. And I really like the fact that right now we're seeing very even plays across the entirety of the field because this is going to be open season for both Tim and Atlas to try to get something done early. Obviously, the Bel'Veth going to massively outscale the Vi, but this isn't to say that the Void Lady doesn't have incredible potential early to go for some big ganks and knocks up off their W. And from there, I think it's really just a matter of everybody playing patient, trying to get some vision early, and really also just baiting people by getting them into deep trades and whatnot. Let's see what the tempo is going to be like. Right now, it seems like the deepest fights are going down bottom side of the map. Robin sniping away with her W, getting T-Lights quite low.
Yeah, T-Light's down under 150 health. Another W from Robin would be enough to send the Seraphine packing. So this is a little bit dangerous for the side of Ragnarok. And some good measured aggression from the side of OE. This is what we need to see as they move forward through this game.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. That being said, Wave is going to crash towards Optimal Esports' side, so Ragnarok will be able to get a really nice reset here. Tempo, not necessarily in their favor, but I do like the fact that they're able to exert a really good back, even with T-Lights in kind of dire straits right there. It means that the Seraphine no longer is at risk of dying, gets their tier, and will be able to set up yet again for a very similar game plan to what we saw in game number 1, just poking away, trying to use their range advantage versus their enemy support, and from there, hopefully affect things positively, not get hit by so many Zeri W's. We are getting a little bit of a pincer movement top side of the map. Atlas maybe looking to get an angle down onto the Sejuani, but Pata is close to their tower, and I don't think that given the Gragas' health or mana, they can go for a dive.
No, but the Sejuani is completely out of mana here, so it would be very difficult for Pata to get away. That being said, Atlas has already chosen to back, so no fight will be forthcoming.
And this is a pretty sleepy early game, first 5 minutes, not a whole lot of action, but as you were saying, Robin, this is kind of what was expected. Everybody just wants to scale up, and what I really like this time around is instead of having this kind of awkward OP champion, but not OP composition that Optimal Esports went for in game number 1. Here, they are much more coherent in their identity. They know that they want to play as a team front to back with Robin popping off once the game goes late. So the fact that they are emphasizing this early game being relatively sleepy, I think works very well for them. And same can be said for Ragnarok Esports. So it's almost kind of a vague handshake. We'll see if things will turn around a little bit now that the dragon is up. But even then, none of these teams really seem like they have the priority mid or bot to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, this game is fairly even, but there are small advantages being eked out. Izzo constantly has push advantage, has a 13 CS advantage, is being free to roam around the map however he prefers. Bot lane, Robin is just a little bit behind on CS, might catch up after this wave, but being pushed in like this does mean that the first Drake is going to be handed over to Ragnarok.
And what I really like is the fact that Bui's and T-Lights, while they aren't necessarily hard winning this lane in terms of CS or in terms of their ability to take down the health bars of Robin and Blue Caboose, the fact of the matter is that they have a really good sense of when to shove, when to hold their waves, and they really feel like they're exerting fantastic control. Although top side of the map, we may be seeing First Blood set up, but it's going to be the turnaround. Oh no, you wrong me right. Outplaying with the body slam, and now is able to flash back, dodge out of the way of Tim's W, and Belveth is so far into enemy territory now. Atlas is rotating up. We'll see if we're going to get yet another engage.
It could be problematic, and as it is, just totally sad.
Disaster. Yeah. This is really, really shaky coming from Optimal Esports early. Pata, I think it's justifiable to die there. You tried your best. You got You Wrong Me Right incredibly low. You had the Ignite. You had kill pressure. The fact that you weren't able to fully execute, you know, that's what the play is there for, to learn off of. And one death is not the biggest deal in the world. We saw that You Wrong Me Right was in a similar situation early in game number 1, and they managed to come back. But Tim is just once again making some really bizarre macro decisions. I don't know why they went for that chase there. After we saw You Wrong Me Right burn the flash, any further attempt to push forward onto this champion just feels foolhardy, especially if you're tracking Atlas on the jungle.
Yeah, just not on the same page with really any semblance of logic there for Tim. A little bit concerning and feels reminiscent of last game where he's just trying too hard to eke out advantages. And while this series still has its legs under it, I worry that moving forward throughout the Optimal season, this is going to be a pain point for the side of OE if they can't get this fixed.
Now, I alluded to technical difficulties earlier. My client just kicked me out of the spectator entirely and I couldn't re-access it. But because of that, I am watching it from Aulz' stream, and because my internet's so bad, I cannot see what the gold count is. Aulz, do you want to contextualize me on that front?
Yeah, sure. We're currently sitting at an 800 gold lead, 11.7 for the side of Ragnarok, 10.9 for the side of Optimal. As we see Pata going in hard here, ultimate from the Malzahar being used, and that's going to be the first kill for Optimal, going over to Izzo. The fun button is pressed.
That's one of the problems that comes from going into man-down fights. Ragnarok Berserkers just wanted to get their jungler out alive, but they were punished for doing so because Izzo can lock up anyone they so desire. It could have been Atlas, but they saw a juicier target in the form of Elliot and decided to focus that champion down instead. And really, this is a good answer back. And while we are seeing Bui's get a lot of priority in plays bot side of the map, Optimal Esports are doing a good job answering to that very early play that got them behind on tempo.
Yeah, that is a lot of quality time alone for Bui's with that turret. Currently sitting up 600 gold over Robin, despite being even on CS. That is not what you want to see for this OE team.
That's certainly problematic, and we are seeing Robin trying to pressure the Twitch as much as possible while T-Lights is out of the lane, but this Twitch is a slippery fellow for sure. Doesn't even have to go invisible, just stays on the far edge of Zeri's auto attack range, and because of that, he's able to kite back and just receive this wave quite nicely now that the Seraphine has reappeared.
Yeah, Seraphine coming back puts the lane back to parity. However, we do also see Elliot looking to roam down with Atlas in the area as well. If that collapse occurs, that's going to be 4 members from the side of Ragnarok down in that bot lane. Might be enough for Tim and Pata to look for an engage here, but there's no Glacial Prison available.
Right. Oh my gosh, and that was a fantastic explosive cast to knock back Tim. Even so, he's going to be stunned up near that turret. Ignite once again ticking away on the Gragas, but he's able to force back these 2 champions, and Optimal Esports still starved for a kill top side of the map. Izzo wrapping around as well. So, as you said, this is the full crash map from both teams, and we see the Rift Herald drop. So this is a lot of gold going back over to red team, but what will they lose bot in turn?
Yeah, and the downside of all of this is the gold's going onto Pata. Glacial Prison is available, they're not going to use it here. But with all this gold going, at least in part, onto a tank, how much value are they necessarily
What
going to get out of it?
you wrong me right doing though?
That was completely baffling.
Just give the turret guy.
Yeah,
Like,
no, there's no justification for that.
all right. Well,
Ooh.
you know, you into like, I guess. Pata
Yeah.
and Tim got their free deaths top side of the map. You wrong me right. Felt bad about it. So they give one back over. They equalize the kill score. But I spy with my little eye a very blocky number that seems to imply Optimal Esports is pretty ahead on gold right now.
Yeah, they're currently sitting 17.8 to 16.1. Encore comes out and hits a turret. But
Yeah,
T-Lights,
unfortunate.
that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that T-Lights was just trying to hit Blue Caboose and Robin as they retreated, and they just didn't have the range to really play off of. Bleeze also popping ultimate there means that's a lot of resources gone. And now, once again, the anti-fun button has been hit. Elliott gonna flash back. Nice little scatter of the week there. We'll be able to get them out of the danger zone, but that burns their flash as well. And honestly, OE looking pretty fresh over the last few minutes. Maybe not entirely under their own power. Clearly, the top laner of Ragnarok Berserkers just wants this game to be closer and take us to a nail biter. But overall, given the fact that now Twitch and Seraphine don't have their ultimates up, we're going to be seeing a split decision on this second drag. And finally, we got a real open game on our hands.
And we have an Inferno Soul. This is going to be fun with these mega scaling teams. Extra damage coming out, extra damage coming down. Speaking of damage, though, Atlas is taking a lot of damage and is going to be taken down here. Just walked into a bush where there happened to be a Tim.
Almost immediate utilization of Pata's newfound priority on the map. Taking down that tier 1 tower topside means that they are able to move around as they so desire. And Ragnarok Berserkers, they need to play more respectfully. They have to be careful when you see that OE has just taken a dragon. You know that they're all grouped down the bot side of the map. And that pick, therefore, just feels once again like Ragnarok Berserkers are just playing this way too loosey-goosey.
Yeah, have to tighten it up a little bit. We did see some of this in the early game of Game 1, too, where they just weren't quite firing on all cylinders. They took about 15 minutes to settle in and really take control of that game. As we approach that 15-minute mark, I'm wondering when the switch is going to flip here.
Yeah, certainly an interesting question. Will the switch even flip, though? This is a larger gold lead in favor of OE than I think we ever saw in game number 1. It's still not that big, but that is a kind of damning factor from the first game. Optimal Esports was struggling there, but here, they're looking a lot cleaner, and I feel that they've gotten their legs under them. It's not necessarily can Ragnarok Berserkers shape up, it's the fact that Optimal Esports already appear like they have shaped up. Big above and below coming through, won't be able to knock up either T-Lights or Bleeze, though, and so for the time being, Belveth just has to back off.
I don't know. There do appear to be pings going down. They did not see Atlas in that bush, but it looks like Optimal has an idea that he is there. So, no 3-on-3 surprise here in the bot lane. Tim's going to back off, the bot lane's going to play safe, and we're just going to see a slow push. Nothing fun, nothing crazy. Just nice, calm League.
And this is what I love about League Aulz, because you can see how that bot lane play was so deeply impacted by the compounding threat that Pata preserves on that map. They were deep in enemy territory up topside. They were getting some vision, and because of that, they know, hey, most likely you got to be careful of Atlas. They're either in their bot side jungle or they're going for a lane gank as we very much speak. Although now they're showing mid. Oh no! The spell shield, and now the anti-fun button is pressed once more. Izzo is going to be able to kill Atlas. Elliott will be able to get one back. T-Lights trying to keep their mid laner alive. Scatter the Weak is going to push back to Velvet, but Pata is going to pincer away at the Syndra and make this a 2-for-1 play in favor of OE.
And that was perhaps the saddest thing I have seen in a long time. Flash forward by Atlas, doesn't get the extended auto attack range on the W to go through. Did not wait long enough for the spell shield to pop off, since it is about a second that the Malzahar gets after it first being damaged. Used that ult too early and just had to sit there and be sad. That hurts my soul, Nyarko. It really
That
does.
was a rough one for sure. I think that Atlas just has to really chill out with the way that they separate engages, especially against something like Izzo's Malzahar. Because I think that as a whole, Optimal Esports have the ability to reclapse back onto a Vi if they go too deep, even if you aren't hitting someone with the spell shield up. Even if you press R onto someone vulnerable like Blue Caboose or Robin, Tim is just going to W as soon as you get deep on into enemy territory. Pata very similarly can just ult you back down. So maybe you get your ultimate off, but that's about it. And now we see Buiz going deep. Robin almost dead there. Might actually tick down because of the poison as a backstop at the very least. Burn their flash and their ghost, but will eventually survive.
Yeah, that was expensive from both ADCs, though Buiz did use Flash Ghost as well. So nothing available in the bot lane. And with Drake coming up in 55 seconds, that could be a deal breaker for one of these teams.
You gotta cut me some slack, Aulz. I can barely see any of the icons right now. I'm getting like 1 pixel a piece for what's been burned and not. I'm mostly just judging out what tone of gray they are right now.
Well, you know, everything's gray to a dog.
Oh, true. Very rude. I don't need that after my 6 straight losses last night in ranked.
Ugh. You know, there's a rule of thumb. You never play more than 3 losses in a row, because after that your mental starts to break down. You come back with fresh eyes and you'll do much better. 6 losses in a row is just miserable. Tim might be equally miserable, getting CC'd to hell and back as Pata doing a lot of disruption in the backside, but there's no damage to follow up. Blue Caboose now in trouble, but Pata's got 1. And this
You
might
wrong me
be a
right
2
deep
for
in
1.
enemy territory. Oh my goodness. This is a weird fight. Ragnarok Berserkers had a really good disengage there with the Seraphine Encore, but they're just overstaying, and because of that, it's another favorable exchange for Optimal Esports.
Pata's very low here. An expunge would kill, but it looks like they're going to be alright, and that's going to be a 2 for 1 in favor of Optimal. I don't know how.
Once again, I have to put this on the back of You Wrong Me Right. It was just kind of a baffling decision for them to body slam as deep into the enemy team as they did there, that you already had a
Caboose.
relatively advantageous push. Yeah, Caboose is incredibly low. Teleport coming out. They want to kill this Lulu, and Ragnarok Berserkers also want to try to take it to this newly spawned Infernal Drake. But there are 4 members. Well, we're going to say 3 1/4 of a member here for OE because, yeah, Lulu desperately needs to get back to their base.
Well, here comes Pata, so this will be a 5-on-4. Lulu, not much help, although she will be able to sit back and shield some. Pata gets the stun onto Elliot, and that's the entry they needed. You wrong me right. Already so low. Do they have the follow-through again?
I mean, Buiz is big.
Buiz may be big, putting some good damage down onto Pata. But here comes Tim, looking for
Look at the
angle.
Twitch too.
Cannot find enough. Izzo uses the ultimate, gets the Twitch down. Twitch is going to fall.
Oh, no.
However, Atlas is doing so much damage in the backside. And the only member of Optimal to survive is Blue Caboose.
What in the world is going on, Aulz? Thank you for taking over play-by-play duties. I have absolutely no clue what I'm processing here, mostly because I'm back at, like, you know, NES graphics era whenever anything with any amount of particle effects appears on the screen. But, yeah, absolutely wild. And so you would say that on balance over the past 2 fights, this is an even number of kills. But the fact that Ragnarok Berserkers is holding on so well, and I think in that second phase, picking a really, really good fight, knowing that OE is going low on multiple fronts, meant that they now have a lot of gold concentrated on, I think, the carry members of the team. Buiz in particular is someone to watch out for. And, you know, You Wrong Me Right is at 2 deaths, but they're on a bit of a redemption arc as well. Look at those kills. Their KP is fantastic.
Yeah, feels pretty similar to last game, doesn't it? Struggled early, but starts to get his feet under him once he gets items. That being said, we are still sparring over this Drake, with it having not been touched at all in any of these fights. Now it gets tickled by T-Lights, will do some damage to Tim. But that being said, it looks like we're going to try and see a flank from Ragnarok here. There is Atlas over the wall looking for a potential Blast Cone steal. Pata is going to go in, gets the Glacial Tomb onto Buiz. Buiz is down under half health, but a Scatter of the Weak lands onto Tim and Pata. Tim is already dead. Robin trying to blast through the Gragas, but does not have enough. Pata is already dead. It is now a 5-on-3 as Ragnarok is running wild here. You Wrong Me Right trying to cut off the escape. Elliot and T-Lights doing their best to support him as the Twitch and Vi take down the Drake. No contest there. 2-0 in favor of Ragnarok, and it might be more as Robin gets hit by the Scatter of the Weak Stung. You Wrong Me Right going over the wall will get more damage, and there it goes. Atlas taking a third. Elliot looking to continue the chase, finds Blue Caboose with another combo. Does hit the Scatter of the Weak, though. A bit of an anti-synergy as he pushed him away from the body slam of You Wrong Me Right, who is going to fall to the turret here. The ultimate from Malzahar kept him in place just long enough, but that is so little in return. That is a extended 4-for-1.
It's absolutely wild to see what Ragnarok Berserkers does in desperate situations like this. They know exactly how to push tough fights to go in their favor. This is the second time that they, from slightly behind, have made a mountain out of a molehill. Aulz.
Here comes
although
Tim.
Elliot may be getting picked here, overall, I think that OE have just lost any amount of advantage they had in those past 3 or so fights. Although you could kind of stack them all into one like 6-minute fight if you wanted to.
Yeah, we've just been fighting since these teams finally turned their monitors on around the 10-minute mark, it feels like.
Yeah,
being said,
sure.
we are getting a turret take here from Pata, so that's a little bit more gold in Optimal's pockets. They still have about a 1,500 gold lead.
And this is not over by any means whatsoever. That being said, what kind of worries me is that a lot of the gold isn't concentrated on Izzo currently. They've been doing such a good job farming that mid lane alongside just picking up the kills that while I like Malzahar's being ahead because it makes their ultimate all that much more scary, there isn't a whole lot of follow-up. Robin and Tim just have been struggling to really lance in and get huge amounts of damage done because Buiz on this Twitch is just a positioning monster. They've been doing so much to answer back against these two AD threats on OE's side, and I think that because of that, these are still going to be very, very fraught fights.
Well, you say that, Nyarko, and I think we have to chalk this up to the fact that you are watching on a potato, but the two highest gold players on the Rift right now are Izzo and Tim. Izzo has 9,200 gold.
Slightly higher.
Izzo has 9,200 gold. Tim has 8,400. The next highest member is Elliot with 83. So
yeah, that's certainly interesting. Yeah, that's a dynamic to watch out for, and yeah, I still cannot tell what any of the golds are, but I imagine that OE may be slightly ahead then, if that's what's implied.
Optimal is ahead by 700 gold at the moment.
Oh, that's barely anything.
Yeah. However, with the entire gold deficit being contained by the bot lane, it's okay to sack Robin a little bit here to get the rest of the team ahead. Shirelia's being popped here, however, the Glacial Prison misses onto Buiz. A huge Encore lands onto 3.5, and a big route to follow lands onto all 5. Buiz forced to flash away as Robin trying to chase, however, will be found out by Atlas. The cease and desist comes out. Robin still not taking much damage, but You Wrong Me Right flashes over the wall for a huge body slam. Elliot gets the kill onto the first. Pata is going to fall. Tim very, very low. And once again, bit of a clean sweep fight for Ragnarok after a bad start.
How in the world did Optimal Esports not get a kill there? I'm asking genuinely because I cannot see what was going on for most of the fight, but you know.
The answer is T-Lights. T-Lights with a huge 3-man encore. T-Lights with a 5-man route, doing everything possible to keep this Optimal team off of the ADC. Blue Caboose is going to be dead here. Elliot doesn't have the fun button, actually, so we'll let Blue Caboose out. However, doing a great job of zoning Tim and Blue away from this Baron. No way to steal if you can't even get past the red buff. Elliot may be in trouble now, burning away from the Malzahar. Cleanse will have to be used. Izzo flashing forward will get the kill as Tim finds the kill onto You Wrong Me Right. Now looking for the Baron down under 1100. The smite comes through, but it will be taken by Atlas. However, Pata on the backside gets the stun on to T-Lights. Will not be able to follow that up. Atlas gets out over the wall, and that's 3 Barons secured for the side of Ragnarok.
Really good play on the back end of that one. Optimal Esports making that a 50-50 for what felt like a very difficult position. They get the 2 kills as well. That's a lot of gold streamed back over to them to provide a contingency plan. Going even on gold into a Baron Nashor buff, especially with, I believe, a tower advantage, is actually quite nice. It makes it much easier to turtle and just play defensively as a whole. I think Ragnarok Esports are going to have to rely on further 5v5s to really try to exert any kind of pressure. But still, this is more gold, and this is more of an advantage back over to blue team.
Yeah, and the fights will not stop here in Nyarko as we have the Infernal Drake spawning. If Ragnarok takes this, this is going to be soul point, so a potential 35-minute Infernal Soul. However, if the side of Optimal takes it, that means at least 10 minutes until either team gets the Infernal Soul. And it looks like instead of the Soul, this Ragnarok team is collapsing onto Pata, who's just going to dash away.
And I think that right now what they're trying to do is the classic mid gambit. They're going for that tier 1 tower, trying to pull some resources from Optimal Esports away from the Dragon and really put red team in a difficult decision tree. It looks like because of the way that this wave was being pushed, OE isn't even really able to get to the Infernal Pit itself. They were too worried about a collapse back in. And so because of that, Ragnarok Berserkers get everything and a can of soda. They're just going to be able to pick up that tier 1 tower and rotate right back over to get the Infernal Drain.
Yeah, and if the side of OE wants this, they're going to have to take a fight. Elliot sidesteps the Glacial Prison. Tim already very low. Tim is going to disappear at the start of this fight. And with Breeze free firing from the back, this fight might already be over. You are me right down to about half, but forces Izzo to run away. The Drake will be taken, and that is soul point secured for the side of Ragnarok. Now 3 Drakes to 1.
You know, I'm heartbroken that I don't get to play-by-play this one, Aulz, although you are doing a magnificent job yourself. Mostly because Seraphine is one of my favorite champions to cast, because their Encore is always just going to be an insane playmaker, and you can just absolutely hoot and holler off of it. And right now, T-Lights is living up to the potential of the champion, doing such a good job just sitting in the back line and definitely executing their ultimate to lock up the core members of Optimal Esports. Tim getting picked there means that there was no reason for OE to push further, and while it is very nicely prudent of them to just step away from that Infernal Drake, it is now soul point over to blue team.
Yeah, you know, you're giving a lot of props to T-Lights, and absolutely deserves. Sitting at 0-0 and 11 has done a great job of keeping the carries of OE away from the carries of Ragnarok. However, sleeper carry right now for me is You Wrong Me Right. There are 15 kills that have been taken by the side of Ragnarok. He has participated in 14 of them, doing a great job of being everywhere and being a part of everything.
It's so wild. It feels that top laners often talk about how their role is the least impactful, and while I would agree from an abstract sense, there are so many games at all levels of play that I feel are decided by the character of their top laners. It feels that it is the role with a whole lot of individual expression in it, and a lot of that, especially at this level, comes from inting it to winning it. You Wrong Me Right, for 2 games running now, has just struggled early on, but look at what kind of a monster they have turned into. They have built that full tank as well. They aren't even egoing. They know that they're playing for their team, and that is a beautiful sight to behold because, as you said, they are now a humongous facilitator alongside T-Lights for these other 3 members of Ragnarok.
Yeah, and this is a great build against this OE team in particular. Frozen Fist to prevent Tim and Robin from repositioning as easily. Frozen Heart on top of that to prevent them from auto-attacking as much. That cuts down the available damage for this optimal side by such a significant amount. Not being able to churn for Tim and Robin is probably helping to keep these carries alive more than we're giving it credit for.
Maybe You Wrong Me Right is just going to come in and say, actually, the only reason why I'm building all the ice items is because I'm playing Arctic Ops Gragas. I really didn't think about my build at all.
Is he playing Arctic Ops? Ah, well, 100%.
He is. He's playing Look at how blue he is. It's basically Fat Rise.
I've never heard that one before.
I mean, actually, Gragas is 100% Fat Rise. Bearded, you know, a mage. But you could also flex it top or mid. I don't think Rise can jungle, but, you know, we won't talk about that fact. But yeah, also very present in pro play.
I've seen weirder things come out of Rise players, so I wouldn't put it past him.
And I think all the pros play Arctic Ops Gragas because, like, it conceals his ability ranges a little bit better. So he's usually also blue at pro play level. So really, it is Fat Rise or Skinny Gragas, one of the two.
Yeah, well, you know, even Gragas is Fat Gragas.
That is true. I do love Gragas, by the way. I kind of wish that we got more lore about him. The one or two stories that we got, like, actually, like, provide so much more than him just being a, body alcoholic.
Yeah, he's a fun champion. Was the first champion I purchased with RP, so he's got a soft spot in my heart. That being said, this Ragnarok team doing a great job of forcing Optimal out as they set up for this Baron, which is spawning in 30 seconds. Have a very strong vision line. Have you wrong me right. Just doing whatever he pleases at this point. Polymorph after polymorph coming out, but the Gragas does not care. Tim is looking for the engage, but a huge encore over the top lands onto 3. Tim already about to die. Has to go into the stopwatch form. However, Atlas taking a lot of damage on the back end. Pata going very low as well. Will be able to get Atlas down, but it might not matter. Blue Caboose very, very low. Tim very low. Izzo down at half health. Robin, the only member left untouched. Meanwhile, Buiz, T-Lights, and Elliott's all feeling perfectly fine. They did kill the jungler, so they'll be able to stop the Baron for now, but that's still not the winning fight that Optimal needs if they want to get back in this game.
And when the red mist settles, or in my case, massive amounts of visual artifacting from my stream absolutely melting during every single team fight, I gotta say, that was a pretty long one for there only be a 1-for-1 kill on the feed. Optimal Esports doing a good job hanging on, as you were saying before. The fact that they took down the jungler of Ragnarok Berserkers is really valuable for them because it's going to be a little bit tougher now for Blue Squad to coherently push into that bot side river where the dragon that is spawning in anywhere from like 9 minutes to 30 seconds, I literally cannot tell.
12 seconds, as a matter of fact.
All right, well, that's a big deal then, okay? Atlas is back on the map now, making a warpath towards that neutral objective, but it is giving the time for Optimal Esports to push out this bot side, and they may be able to enter into that pit to at least try to contest this Soul.
Yeah, and the fact that Soul was getting close is probably why we saw Tim looking for the engage onto You Wrong Me right there. Wanted to take the engager off the map for the side of Ragnarok. However, it looks like they're just going to give up this Drake in service of attempting a Baron trade. This is bold here, Nyarko, especially with how fast that Drake is melting. Drake Soul will be taken any second now. There it goes. And Inferno Soul just makes these fights harder. I don't know what Optimal was thinking giving that up.
Yeah, because there's absolutely no way that they would have been able to take that Baron Nash. Right? Let me tell you, between the shred that the Baron provides and the fact that Ragnarok Berserkers have already just taken down the dragon in an eye blink, Optimal Esports would have thrown away the entire game there if they actually tried to commit to taking the big farm.
Tim.
And honestly, they still be throwing away the game. Tim wanted his Krugs.
And Robin's going to be the first to fall, actually, paying Tim's price. Tim trying to be saved by Blue Caboose here with the wild growth. It will not matter, though. Buiz has reached the Twitch point. Malzahar is dead with 3 members off the board. The Baron is all but secured. And Ragnarok has once again found their momentum, put their foot down, and will be taking over this game.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, what an impressive play there from the AD carrier of Ragnarok Berserker. Because not only are they going to be able to get this top lane turret, or at least siege it for a while, but this is also Baron Nashor, as the Twitch is going to start it off alongside the jungler.
Yeah, they didn't get the turret, but they did get Blue Caboose. So, small victories for the side of Ragnarok. Baron is also secured here, will be taken off the map, and will help quite likely to finish off this final push whenever Ragnarok decides to group and end here.
Yeah, I mean, overall, Optimal Esports, they were looking good in that early game, but it's yet again a matter of them just calling to take some really difficult coin flippy fights that ultimately went in Ragnarok Berserker's favor. And hopefully throughout the rest of the season, we're going to be able to see some more development regarding the way that they make those mid-game macro calls. But right now, this is a dire situation. It's looking grim for Tim, as it were, as I think Ragnarok Berserkers are well set up to take this in 2 games.
Yeah, Ragnarok looking good, will have a lot of momentum moving into week 2. For the side of Optimal, as they're potentially hoping for a miracle save here, should this game be a loss, what can they take from this series moving forward? What did they learn? What do they need to change? Okay.
Ban Seraphine and be like, you need to be 100% on how you commit to fights. You want good vision control, and you want to have a really good sense of where you are in comparison to your opponent. There's a lot of like small intangibles because you aren't seeing the gold lead in the game proper. Pata gonna nearly get picked there. Is taking enough to be able to get out alive though. But
Yeah,
yeah,
however,
what I was saying before is that one of the hardest things at this level of skill to kind of adapt to is the fact that not everything is written out on paper. This isn't a chess game where everything is very apparent to you. Sometimes you do have to make gambles and say, hey, we're going to take the 5v5. We're going to 50-50 this dragon. I think that we have the skill to be able to take everybody out. But what impacts the way that those fights operate is often the intangibles such as positioning. Where is the Seraphine? Can you get onto them early? You're going to be able to fire off a big encore. And this time around, it just looks like they just weren't able to make good decisions as now we see another encore.
Encore only lands onto Robin, but it's not going to matter. The Zeri is dead. Pata not far behind, as Tim actually the next to fall. You Wrong Me Right will help secure the next two. It's just Blue Caboose. Once again, a flash forward from You Wrong Me Right to try and get the extra slow, and Breeze is going to finish that off. That is a 5-for-0 ace. The inhibitors are falling, and Ragnarok is rising here 2-0 in the first match over Optimal Esports, putting their foot down, saying we want control of this league.
Man, Blue Caboose is going to need some therapy after these 2 games. It feels like they've survived every fight until the very end and watched all of their friends die along the way. But unfortunately, Optimal Esports, even with a very resilient Lulu, will not be able to take this game. Number 2, Ragnarok Berserkers looking strong. And once again, at this level of play, Aulz, they have their weaknesses. They were just not answered by OE today.
Yeah, great job by Ragnarok, making sure that everything flowed smoothly, and a lot of room for improvement from Optimal. They definitely have points of carry. Izzo, 34,000 damage, the most in the game. But they've got points of weakness. Tim only did 14,000 damage that game. Robin didn't even break 10,000. Every single member of Ragnarok did more damage than the Zeri. That is very difficult to win when your ADC is not a part of the game.
And you could say that it's not necessarily the Zeri's fault here. We got to defend the honor of Robin, obviously, Alls. And so, as a contingency, we will say when you're behind, when you're on a champion like Zeri who needs to get close, when your entire team is just getting obliterated by T-Lights' ultimates from half a football field away, it's incredibly difficult for this champion to pop off and do a whole lot. And while Izzo is able to target, silence a few people, and also drop their ultimate to suppress a carry of Ragnarok Berserkers, they can only do so much to take down one person. And unfortunately, we just didn't see Tim do enough in the jungle. For me, that's someone that really, I think, needs to look back at these games and just try to find a new approach. I would like to have seen them on the Sejuani this time around, but instead they gambled on another carry champion. And while they did better on the Belveth, I think, than they did on the Kindred, neither of these games very much impressed me with their performance as a whole, and I hope that they could develop from here.
Yeah, however, we do still have plenty of weeks left, so there's plenty of times for all of these players to step up and improve. We'll just have to see what direction that takes. That being said, we are going to step aside for about an hour and a half. The next match up is going to be Deanya White facing off against, pardon me, versus Always Slept On. We're going to have that starting here, 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Go ahead, go get some food, go take a break. We will be back in an hour and a half with more fun for you all. We hope to see you again real soon.